Welcome back to the North American LCS. The teams are readying up on stage for round 2 between Team Dignitas and Counter Logic Gaming.
Yeah, we also have to point out our player of the game from last game. It was hard to choose because it was such a rotational game by CLG, but we are deciding to go for Aphromoo in part just because of his leadership. You got to see in some of those sound ups at the rollout there is just he was making most of the calls, participated in almost all of their kills, and facilitated the plays.
Definitely a game that was won out of team play, not an individual player just putting everybody on his back. It was a conscientious effort by all 5 members of CLG, and when you're one of the guys leading that effort, you deserve the player of the game.
Yeah, CLG kind of snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. Part of that, as well as Stixay, was just poking nonstop. If there was going to be a runner-up for player of the game, it's definitely Stixay here. Yes, he was Varus, but 44,500 damage and 42.6% damage share is ridiculous. If you look at season averages, you almost never see anyone over 35%. So for an individual game to have that high of a damage share is pretty nice.
And going into game number 2, if you're Team Dignitas, you've kind of got to ask yourselves, what is the game plan? Because we mentioned at the end of the last game, this was the dream, right? Game number 1, you got that split push Fiora, you got to play it into a tank.
Yeah.
This was the win condition that Dignitas was hoping for, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, what's interesting is I feel like if they were to play the game again, they'd be confident that they'd be able to win, right? Because they were so close. That game was on a razor's edge pretty much the entire time, and the analyst desk mentioned, like, even in Korea and his career records, somebody's got like an 80% win rate on Fiora or something close to that. So
it's really, really good.
I think if they could get Fiora into tank again with good poke and disengage, they'd actually take it. But it is worrying for them because I don't think they're going to get that again. And CLG did manage to beat them what is essentially their best.
And I mean, if you're CLG, the amount of difficulty behind getting that win, it's not like this was an easy win. They didn't just walk through it and take the victory. So you've got to be thinking, let's not play this same game again.
Exactly. They get to have blue side this time as well. And just based on the way that a lot of champion selects have been falling out, like, blue side has ended up being quite favored with the first pick and the other teams often banning the standard bans of LeBlanc, Camille, and Rengar. So CLG going to be happy to be on this side. It means they could probably get something like Kha'Zix early, and they get a lot more targeting in the ban phase.
Same target that they were able to select last time, though, as their last part of the bans, the Rise, making sure that that doesn't fall into the hands of Keen. It is his most played mid laner so far in Spring Split 2017, so they don't want to allow him to have it this time. LeBlanc and Rengar banned away by Team Dignitas, no real surprises, and there you go, not today, someday.
Yeah, just don't let it happen. It also allows CLG to pick Maokai much earlier with more safety. Of course, they picked it unsafely last time. Would not be surprised for a first pick Kha'Zix, but Darshan just has so much happiness on Maokai, and now that they aren't even going up against Fiora, I guess that just emboldens him even more. They banned out the 2 potential carry counters, and he is just best-in-class tank, so they're going to go with it really early.
Interesting number as well for both Darshan and Someday. Maokai is the most played top laner in Spring Split 2017 with 6 plays before this series for both of them. Next closest for each one of them was either Nautilus or Poppy at 3.
Yeah, for sure. So they got those tanks on lockdown for sure. Poke goes over to Team Dignitas. Varus Kha'Zix would make, as long as Kha'Zix isn't banned yet, would make a lot of sense.
No Kha'Zix bans yet. Not this time.
Yeah, you and I have had the mistake before of being like, why are they not picking this banned champion?
That was...
And we just do the whole champ select. So now every time I'm going to make it, I'm triple checking what's banned.
I always end up doing the same thing. Once you watch one VOD chat replay of the entire chat calling you boosted for 10 minutes because you didn't realize that Maokai was actually banned, just make sure to slip the double check in there. Make sure it's actually what it appears to be, as they don't go for the Kha'Zix, instead opting into Lee Sin.
Yeah, these teams are just kind of changing up their priorities a little bit, especially Team Dignitas. But Chaser's Lee Sin has been really good. He's played it into many a Kha'Zix and had control of the early game, so this is a preference pick for Chaser. I think if you were just making an objective power tier list, Kha'Zix would be a little bit above it. And he does a lot of the things Lee Sin can do, but if Chaser's just more comfortable on Lee, that's why he's going to go with it.
Comfort picks can sometimes lead to a win where OPs might not. CLG going to go ahead and decide to respond the same way Dignitas did last time. They answer the Varus with the Jhin. Make sure you get a nice top-tier lethality using 80 carry in there before the second round of the bans kick in.
Yeah, if they wouldn't have picked it, would have easily been pushed down, although they had been fairly comfortable with the Sivir yesterday. I loved that adaptation. And the Malzahar being picked by Team Dignitas is putting an X Special in a seat where he can initiate a little bit, and he's had pretty good games on Malzahar thus far. Not to mention CLG, the last 4 games they've played, I feel like, they've banned the Zyra and the Malzahar in Phase 2. Team Dignitas not going to let that happen.
Can't do it this time around. This also means that the first round of picking is not going to be a direct mirror like we often see it be in terms of the roles selected. So the bans are going to be changing up a little bit here in Phase 2. Dignitas, again, going to ban away Aurelion Sol from Huhi. Just so much respect for what he can do in this champion. One of the few players that's really exceptional at it.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. He's the only player who's played it in the NALCS. I mean, everyone is just doing the other mid laners, but he finds the way to roam around the map. And here, CLG is really going to push someday into a niche, as niche a possible a pick. You mentioned the second most played after Maokai for someday was Poppy. They've also banned out his carries in Jason Fiore. They're really pushing him down, especially if they ban Nautilus. That moves him on to something like Gangplank, and that has a much slower curve as far as powering up.
Yeah, that's actually the only other champion that he has played so far in Spring Split 2017 would be the Gangplank, and he's played it 1 whole game.
Can't ban them all.
There are not quite enough bans, even in New Champion Select, to get rid of everything. They aren't going to ban the Nautilus away. They would rather take Corki off of the table, not deal with that endless poke that they had to last time.
Yeah, there's obviously the chance you could just tank for tank with Nautilus, and that wouldn't be bad for Team Dignitas. But there's also something that is yet to make an emergence in the North American LCS, and that's the top lane Kennen. Instead, he goes with what Looper was doing against Maokai, which is a top lane Swain. I'm pretty sure that's going to be top lane instead of mid lane, although they could flex it. And it's definitely an interesting choice, and it's what CLG set up with all those bans.
Stixxay hovering the Warwick, but of course we know that that's just the Stixxay trademark. It's not actually a Warwick hover. So, but the Swain in the top lane, every time I see that now, all I can think of is when Looper played it and was 0-0 and 0 at 42 minutes. So hopefully we see a little bit more of an action-packed top lane than what was provided by that. Misfortune's going to be picked up as the support for CLG. We know it's support because Jin's already locked in, so none of that 80 carry Misfortune massive damage share that we saw yesterday in FlyQuest versus Dignitas. As Afromu now has to make the choice of what he's going to be playing on the support. We saw some good death sentences last game. Obviously, we gave him player of the game. The playmakers, we want to see another one.
Yeah, well, they're going to try and get the playmaking out of the mid lane because the Misfortune is locked in for the support as far as the selection process goes.
I literally just said Misfortune support, not thinking about Afromu support. I don't know, my brain turned off there for a second.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because for the last few days, that's all Afromu has been going for, but just the situation presented itself. CLG heavily decided to prioritize getting the Maokai and the initiation on other roles so that now they're just trying to make sure they don't get smashed in lane, and it puts him onto the Misfortune.
Afromu on that Misfortune means Huhi's going to be on that Syndra there in the mid lane, having to deal with Keen's Echo as the response.
Yeah, Echo is a pretty standard pick into Syndra. It's another one of these things that you don't really want to call a counter pick, but it's more of just a thing you pick to not get smashed. I want a name for that, because that's what I feel like Misfortune is into Malzahar and Zyra, and that's what I feel like Echo is into Syndra. It's an assassin who can avoid the ultimate, he can also come back to lane very quickly instead of getting poked out, and has ways of influencing the map. You're still willing to first pick Syndra with that pick available, but you're very expected to get it against you, and Keen's a pretty good Echo.
It just means that the pick you're picking it into is actually so dominant, it normally farms every other champion. And in a counter pick, you don't mean, oh yeah, I'm going to beat this guy. You just mean, I'm not going to get farmed.
Yeah, there we go. That's the hope.
That is the dream right now for this Echo and for Keen and for Team Dignitas. A win here means they're going to be taking things to game number 3. A loss means CLG is going to find themselves in the middle of the pack with Dignitas tied for dead last.
Oh, man.
The nightmare situation that we talked about going into game number 1 is now ever so closer to becoming reality for Team Dignitas as Counterlogic Gaming probably feeling pretty good about themselves for being able to find that comeback win in game number 1. Maybe that'll give them a little bit of extra momentum here in game number 2 as Dignitas has to make sure that they got their heads on straight. They're ready to take it to their opponents yet again here in game number 2. Maybe be able to find an advantage and just end it with that translation into a win this time around as we're loading on to Summoner's Rift for the second time today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Dignitas versus CLG.
And we got a top lane Swain. We kind of brushed over that in Champ Select a little bit because there were so many bans at Someday, but normally you're pretty excited about seeing that. This is a pick that you very seldom see in the top lane, but he should be able to farm up against Maokai. I also think Swain is a pick that is a little bit more vulnerable in the early game before he's been able to get the Rod of Ages to just give him that little extra bit of durability so he can almost drain tank you with the Ravenous Flock. So let's pay attention. There was so much ganking pressure in the top lane last game between xMithy and Chaser. Would not be surprised to see them try something similar again here.
xMithy and Chaser both made so many attempts, not just topside, but xMithy especially all over the map in game number 1, very early on, just trying to be involved in the lanes every possible opportunity. And Swain is very slow, he's immobile, he's not exactly scary if he doesn't have his entire spell combination ready to go to unleash on you. So those early ganks, that early pressure is a very likely possibility onto him before the ultimate becomes available.
Yeah, and defensive lines for both teams early on. Although CLG may be going for they're considering going for the late invade. Chaser being safe enough, spots him coming in. And that will probably mean they're just going to do standard starts.
No Kha'Zix flash blown at level 1 this time.
No.
Not today.
Not today.
xMithy saw what happened to Chaser in the last game. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. That's a pretty bad idea.
Be a little bit safer. Yeah, obviously, we're seeing many more topside starts by junglers. Duo lanes down bottom really care so much about getting the wave shove started so that they can hit level 2 first, because that's usually a significant edge down the bot side, whereas the top laners don't care as much about that, so they're more willing to give a pull.
Both junglers, excuse me, going to be starting on the top side of the map. That means this time around, we're not going to see the red start mirrored for both of these sides. As Dignitas, Lodnik Special pushing up early on, taking control over the minion wave, just sort of shoving these up into Stixxay and Aframu's faces. The power of X-Special on that Malzahar. We've seen what those Voidlings can do early on, man. They're so scary.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons Misfortune's picked against it, because with the Love Tap passive, they can kill the Voidlings much faster. Doesn't mean you don't have to run away from them, though, as we see there.
Darshan finding level 2 before Someday does means he gets a good chance to jump on top of him and get a decent little bit of an edge for himself. Of course, Someday with potions is going to be just fine. Returns the favor right back onto Darshan as soon as he finds that level 2.
Yeah, Darshan with the Corruption Potion already burning through all the stacks, so trading very aggressively here, which is interesting because xMithy's not pathing to that side yet. He's doing a very Kha'Zix-style route where he's killing the camps that have the fewest number of things so he can get more isolations off, but this makes Darshan vulnerable. And he has been playing so aggressive in the first 2 levels on Maokai and getting away with it, but this time he could get punished. Oh,
Keen with some good combo damage onto Huhi with the Echo, just utilizing that mobility after the orbs have already been fired off. Considering he got hit by Scatter the Weak just a moment ago, he knew the disengage really wasn't going to be there. Pretty much a free trade.
Ooh, so Darshan teleporting back into the wave. This could have been really dangerous because he has no wards in the river, and Chaser's actually going to start pathing back up here now. Because if he can kill Darshan here, it would be the most punishing of kills. Now he's got the ward in the river, so it makes the gank a little bit trickier, but Chaser could still go for it through the Blast Cone.
Instead, going to fire that Scryer's Bloom into the enemy jungle. Just make sure that xMithy's not hanging around here as he goes for some counter jungling action. Stealing away that Gromp, just sort of robbing xMithy of that economy. Yeah, with the respawn timers on the jungle camps now, it actually is quite useful to sometimes steal those away and wreck their farm path a little bit.
Yeah, xMithy went for the full clear, which is a pretty big switch up and puts a lot of faith under Sean to not die, because if Chaser would have just gone up there for a gank, he probably would have killed. But the fear was, in an early game 2v2 Maokai vs Kha'Zix, you probably win that versus the Lee Sin Swain if Someday has used his cooldown. So he was afraid of the 2v2 and he never went for really a full gank. Interesting there, because that could have been really bad for CLG.
Bot lane tide has turned as well. Stixxay and Aframu now have control over the lane in their own right, keeping Lot and X-Special back. Deadly Flourish not finding its way onto X-Special as Aframu's having to deal with a whole heap of trouble coming at him from those Malefic Visions with Voidlings combination. xMithy waiting to utilize the Blast Cone to maybe come up here and jump onto Someday if he can, but with Chaser still hanging around, could quickly evolve into that 2v2 we were talking about.
Yeah, xMithy has shock though, so he's got the double longsword. He's really hoping to either catch the 2v2 or just get a delayed 1v2 gank off of, but with how Chaser and Someday have been playing, xMithy's just sensing the Chaser has to be around somewhere, so they don't want to overcommit for a game.
Someday and Chaser deciding to back in synchronization. Nobody wants to leave the other guy there alone, having to risk the xMithy gank by himself. Darshan 27 to the 39 farm of Someday, so Swain getting himself about the same kind of a lead that we saw from the Fiora last game, actually.
Yeah, very true. I mean, he is a ranged champion, so has good amounts of CS. Under turret as well. Harder for Darshan to harass him out of it, but that's still credit to Someday, because Swain is not necessarily that strong until he's getting level 6 with the Catalyst, and surprise, he has that now, so it could only get worse for Darshan.
You know what I'm excited about this game, Jet? First Drake Infernal. This sometimes encourages teams to do stuff that they wouldn't normally do because of which Drake it is. Keen going to be eating a lot of damage from Huhi, who hits level 6 before that Chrono Break is available, so no way to dodge away from it. And Keen, now ticking level 6, is in a pretty scary spot if he doesn't back.
Yeah, but the nice thing about level 6 Echo is you can back and ult straight into lane if you so choose, especially since Huhi's ultimate is down. Instead, he decides to use his teleport, going to save his ultimate for later. That'll help the side lanes feel a little bit safer here for CLG.
Speaking of low HP, Xpecial's really not sitting in a very good spot himself. Kind of hanging out over the wall. Going to back in secret so they can still might be thinking that he's hanging out over there. Don't want to go too deep onto Lod with that possibility being a reality. But Lod's just continuing to farm up 45 to 57 CS. He's also finding himself with a decent disadvantage. Keen actually the closest in terms of farm across the map to his opponent.
Yeah, very true. Able to keep up with that Syndra. Whereas I like Stixxay and Aphromoo winning that lane. It's speaking to some improvement as they started the year very slow and lower than expectations. Felt like they are coming in off-season shape, so to speak.
Yeah.
And they're coming into these games early, but rounding into shape just a little bit. Lod, though, able to shove out the lane and kind of equalize CS. So not a huge lead there, just that huge lead top lane.
Remember, Dignitas is still looking for the rest of the team to kind of step up and alleviate some of that weight from Sumday's shoulders sometimes. Every game, it's always the Sumday show. It's always, Sumday, can you carry this? Sumday, how strong is that back of yours? And everybody else is like, well, when are they going to step up? When are they going to join Sumday up there and say, no, I've got this one?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's not like they haven't had great games in their own rights. Like, Keen had a 9-kill Azir game, but they lost. Like, they need to be able to capitalize on advantages that they can gain. As they get a cheeky attempt at a blue buff steal, but don't quite get it.
Keen eating
Does Darshan flash for this?
Decent damage. Darshan going for the flash. Looking to make the play. Twisted advance into the mix. Keen going to go ahead and Chrono Break back. But it's right back into the waiting arms of CLG, and Huhi has got first blood.
And that's why Darshan wants to be on Maokai. It is the reliable champion that when he finds a position, he's able to pull the trigger and get it done. Because that was just a 3v3 that Team Dignitas was a little bit retreating from. And they go for more, but Chaser gets away completely.
Deadly Flourish locking him down, though. A little bit more damage might have been able to make something happen there, but instead Chaser gets himself out alive. Lod's going to be eating some pain from that Make It Rain. As Stixxay and Aphromoo both hanging around the mid lane now, looking to see if they can get any kind of pressure onto this tier 1 with the enemy mid laner dead. Someday again jumped on by Darshan, who's now starting to feel more comfortable in this top lane.
Yeah, and CLG just so different than other teams in the strategy. Who rotates their duo lane to just shove the mid lane turret 7 minutes in? That just doesn't happen by most accounts. So here, they could not get the blue buff steal from Xmithy. Xmithy goes in, gets some damage on Keen. Chaser and Someday are really just in full retreat. Keen, poor placement of his parallel convergence there. If he placed it more forward, he would have been able to pretty much get out because he would have stunned people as soon as he jumped in, but he kind of has to run past it to avoid Darshan flashing over the wall, and then the ult back didn't really do much other than ensure his death.
Now Huhi's chasing him down again as Aphromoo and Xpecial find each other at the entrance to the red side.
Oh, that's
Turret call's going to be opened up. Bullet time comes out. They got to block the shots.
Ooh.
And they do. Xpecial's going to walk himself away from this one, but Lod down to about half HP after defending that teammate. Still a lot of activity in this bottom part of the Dignitas jungle from CLG. Looking if they can make any kind of a pick out of this. Maybe grab an Infernal off the back. For now, it's just going to be that blue buff steal.
Well, they are getting very proactive and aggressive with their plays. After they're able to shove Chaser out of the blue buff, the poke they're able to get on Xpecial, immediately taking that into a blue buff steal, and now going right to that Infernal Drake. Kha'Zix level 6 also incredibly fast at taking it.
No reason not to if the enemy team doesn't have a way to stop it, but right now it looks like
close.
Dignitas might be moving themselves into the pit. Drake is low, Chaser's in, and he's got the steal away. Keen can't quite mop up Xmithy as well. Damage and burst coming down onto Aphromoo, forced to flash away to dodge the Sonic Wave. CLG gets a little bit big for their britches and gives away an Infernal.
Yeah, that was an oopsie. They thought they'd be able to damage it with just the support and the jungler because Stixxay was off in the lane making sure to get shoved, so they were being greedy there, and it cost them the Infernal Drake because they do not kill it in time, and Team Dignitas threatened to kill enough that Xmithy can't get the smite.
Dignitas with that Infernal, feeling good about that. It's going to help the damage for the Echo, the Lee Sin, the Swain, and without, you know, a super tank top laner or a super tank jungler or anything like that, everybody's going to be benefiting from that bonus damage that the Infernal's going to be giving them. Everybody's got a use for that on this team.
Yeah. Even though Drakes can be useful for many champions, there's definitely things that are more useful for certain champions. Jhin is actually, I think, the biggest benefactor of the Infernal Drake because he gets so much AD since he has natural stat conversions to AD that when you were increasing that AD by a percentage, he gets more AD than anyone else would based off that. So
8% of 200 is more than 8% of 150.
Yeah. But then you also have to take into account Maokai gets almost nothing from Infernal Drake, but Swain does. So both of these teams actually benefiting a little bit more from Infernal Drake than an average team.
Dignitas in the bottom lane, 88 CS in the Varus compared to 100 CS on that Jhin. Both of these two, of course, working for that Ghost Blade first item lethality. So popular, so strong right now. Darshan jumping his way in on top of Someday to dodge away from the Never move, as well as get some decent damage down. Now that he's got that Spectre's Cowl, AP damage becomes something that's just kind of laugh it off for him.
Yeah, both those guys are going to be using a lot of spells on each other to not much effect at this point. Just Rod of Ages Swain does enough to sustain up of any damage Darshan can throw at him. And as you mentioned, the Spectre's Cowl, it's not that much damage, so...
Drain tank versus real tank. It's just a wet noodle fight by a different name.
Pretty much.
Chaser getting some wards down in the enemy jungle, seeing if there's anything to steal away there, seeing if he can keep any extra eyes on Xmithy. Someday and Darshan, there they go, slapping each other around with no real consequence. Someday going to go ahead and turn that bird form off before it saps too much of his mana away, though.
Yeah, and Darshan is the one that is incurring more risk in that lane because for these trades, he's having to Twisted Advance forward and kind of use all his spells. So if Chaser was there while he's doing that, it would be more fatal than Someday, who's just a bird walking around and could easily walk out.
Dignitas rotating multiple people into the bottom lane now, looking to take down this tier 1 if they can. They're down about 700 gold, so Turret First Blood would put them in a pretty solid spot, but Stixay and Aframu are going to hold the line. Huhi and Xmithy were both hanging around, coming down through that jungle as well, in case Dignitas decided to stick around and really try to force something hard. As Chaser's Sonic Wave misses the same way Xmithy's Rockets do. They can't really find anything onto each other, although they acknowledge the presence. Darshan finally starting to come out on the wrong end of these trades, going to be forced back for now, as Someday shoves the wave up.
4 or 5 waves of trading, and you see Someday slightly ahead, and now being able to pick up that honey fruit. Xmithy's thinking about tanking, but he's smaller. Now it's Huhi's caught.
Huhi looking to make the first happen onto Keen, but instead it's him who's going to be in some trouble. Chaser's there with the follow-up damage. Keen now in real danger of being bursted all the way down. Darshan looking to make the moves, Twisted Advance into the play, and he's got the kill.
2 for 2 on flash Twisted Advances to Keen kill conversion for Darshan, and they want Someday, but he's really healing.
Way too tanky. Xmithy too squishy to go any further underneath the turret. Level 7 versus level 10 as Curtain Call opens up. Someday's going to be in danger. Bullets flying past. Can't quite find him, though. Chaser looking to tank the 4th one up if he has to. Bullet time over the wall. Law's going to be taken down to half. Special with an ult onto Stixay. Everybody gets themselves away, though. Huhi somehow still alive. Deadly Flourish not going to be finding its mark either, as piercing arrows land their way into CLG's backs during the retreat.
Yeah, everybody pokes as they move towards the mid lane, and nobody ends up actually dying, but I think CLG does come out on top of that one because they can steal the red buff, and ultimately they did start that with a kill on a key.
They steal the red buff, they grab the kill, they're 1,500 gold up. Maokai's now got Spirit Visage done, so bye-bye Swain damage for real this time.
Better. Yeah, a little bit more healing, a little bit more MR. We're going to watch this one more time, and this was tricky. Like, Huhi gets collapsed down on by the Lee Sin and the Echo, and Keen needs to ult back because Huhi ulted forward, and then Huhi just flashes back into his turret, so he prevents them from chasing in all the way. Keen, since he had to ult early for that Cinder ultimate, did end up getting punished by the Darshan TP, so that's the first pick Maokai coming in valuable as being the reason that they're picking up these first 2 kills.
And both deaths on Keen so far have been a good job of CLG recognizing the opportunity to say, look, we know he's got Chrono Break, but he's going to put himself in a spot where we can still make a play anyway, and pulling that trigger. As Aframu now in some trouble. Dig might have found their shot, a little bit more damage. Laud wants a Chain of Corruption at the very end. Just the tip gets it, but it's going to be 1 for 1 because Huhi unleashes a volley into Chaser.
Yeah, and
a volley of orbs, not a volley ability.
It did a lot of damage because he had just hit level 11 and had Morellonomicon plus Sorcerer's Shoes. So that is kind of perfect timing for CLG. Aframu definitely caught out of position, but They chased a little bit too close to Syndra, and that's what she does.
Syndra is one of those champions that you can just never... You make one mistake of underestimating the damage one time,
Yep.
and it just starts her down a dangerous path, this road to ruin, where she can just start deleting people 100 to 0. We've all seen the clips on Reddit of Syndra missing every skill shot, then pressing R and grabbing the kill anyway, so definitely a reality Dignitas is trying to avoid.
Yeah, especially as a jungler, Syndra is one of the most scary mids to play against, because if anything goes wrong in your gank, you're dead. And that's even if you're 1v2, because Syndra's first full burst combo is that threatening. Later in the game, you really want to be able to get on top of the Syndra, but definitely her area of influence is incredibly dangerous in the mid game.
With Morello Namicon now completed, she's also got all those base stats that Syndra wants to have to be effective, the ability power, the mana, the cooldown reduction. And that's also going to go even further this game, because that healing reduction is going to be super useful against Sunday's Swain.
Yeah, it really will be, and it's a pretty standard thing, so that's what Swain needs to be knowing about throughout the game. And as long as he can stay high on health, he doesn't have to worry about it as much. It's going to depend heavily on how big Someday ends up getting in this game.
Someday with 6 stacks on his Rod of Ages means he's on his way to having that item fully evolved. Mercury Treads as well to just sort of get out of that threatening CC from both the Maokai and the Syndra stuns just a little bit faster.
Yeah, notice the Mercury Treads all around, really. 3 sets, more than you would normally see, but that's because stuff like Syndra Stun, Jin Root, even the Maokai Twisted Advance, and CLG's ability to quickly follow up on them are kind of their primary way of getting picks to start fights with. And if Someday can sit around in the longer, more extended fights, he's a lot of sustained damage that they're really going to want. So as long as he can avoid getting locked down, it'll help their chances.
CLG with a little over a 2,500 gold lead now. Second Drake has spawned, but you saw Smithy kind of hang around in the pit for a second, then jump out the back way, likely remembering what happened with the first time they tried to take the Drake like this. Doesn't want to make that same kind of a mistake again, as Dignitas decides, hey, CLG's not taking it, we might as well do it ourselves. It's going to be no contest. Cloud Drake goes their way.
Yeah, and this is the area of the game where Team Dignitas is winning. That's now 2 Drakes to 0.
Absolutely.
Especially with CLG wanting to go around the map to get so many picks. Having that Cloud Drake definitely helps him avoid a lot of the skill shots. And CLG definitely winning this early game. Hui going QSS early, though, diminishes his burst threat a little bit. He doesn't want to get shut down by Xpecial just flash ulting him, but hitting that Luden's Power Spike second is just so important that I'm a little surprised Hui goes for that defensive play.
With Stixay and Aframu now in the top part of the map, Sunday's doing what he can to try to defend some of these wards from them as they push up and look to take more turrets after grabbing that turret first blood in the bottom lane. Aframu and Stixay got to be careful, though, because Someday is actually really threatening. If he can land a never move onto either one of them, he poses a serious kill threat.
Yeah, level 12, Swain at this point in the game. Someday, heavily banned in champion select, pushed onto the Swain right here. Doing about as you would expect in the lane, although he is, what was it, 18 minutes into the, what was Looper's record, 42 minute 0-0-0
Yeah, 42
Swain?
minute 0-0-0.
Yep. 24 minutes of farming and Someday can get there. Hasn't yet found his way into the game.
It's going to be a long path getting all the way there.
Oh, here we go, flash ult.
Play ult's going to be used. Aframu taken low. Piercing arrow coming out. Chains of Corruption to follow it up. Aframu going to be taken down first. Stixay looking to get away. Lod has got the pick up there, but it's a double kill for Smithy as well. 2 for 2 so far, and Someday is not looking to stop anytime soon. He's got Keen hanging around nearby, but Darshan continues to chase, jumping back onto that Dignitas mid laner. Smithy's coming up. He's going to be coming up. Keen is going low. Protobelt to get himself to safety, having a flash out now as well. Someday underneath the top lane tier 1. Keeping himself alive, but are they looking to make the dive? Swain can be really tricky to get the dive on. That drain tank is no joke.
Exactly. He's very high in health, but they're looking to at least get some turret damage and threat. Nah, it's full health Swain.
It's way too tall of an order. CLG's going to back away. A lot of deaths in that fight, though.
Oh, yeah. The bot lanes all died. They all died. It was Xpecial blowing up very quickly. He's kind of going all out for these initiations when they don't necessarily have a clean pick, because Xpecial ended up dying first, even though he's the one who flashed for the Nether Grasp. So if you are the one expending most of your summoner spells and ultimates to initiate, you do not want that to backfire, but it does a little bit. Now CLG trying to pressure that mid turret.
Curtain Call opened up as a zoning mechanism to keep Dignitas away from this, but the minion wave has expired, so it's not going to be buying them that turret anytime soon.
And CLG still with that gold lead, although the Infernal and Cloud Drake make you argue that the game is a little bit closer. Still like the position they're in this game, as long as Darshan can continue to kind of fly in without consequence. There's not that much tank busting on Team Dignitas, so even with the first pick Maokai, Team Dignitas never really found a way to build in any tank busting because they were more worried about lane counter picks. And with that, their lane counter picks haven't given them any huge advantages that they can take over the rest of the map as of yet.
CLG still sitting on a minor gold lead for themselves, still feeling okay as to the way this game's going, not having to worry about a massive 1v1 threat from someday like they did last time. Swain, of course, still scary in a lot of 1v1s, but he's definitely not Fiora in terms of what she can do to bust tanks and just tear through turrets.
Yeah, it looks like he's going for the Spirit Visage second on the Swain as well, as they're kind of dancing around the bottom lane. That is good to prevent the burst from Syndra, but there are still substantial physical damage threats. Like, CLG has done a good job of building a team composition that has varied damage threats, which makes it hard for someone like Swain. Swain would really excel since he's a champion that kind of hits this critical mass since he has so much self-healing. Either you can kill him and you kill him super fast, or you can't quite kill him and he's at full health all the time. And it becomes much harder to hit that critical mass when he has to worry about physical damage as well.
In the meantime, though, the junglers starting to get themselves a little bit tankier on the side of Lee Sin, and of course more damage heading the way of Kha'Zix. Hex Drinker done second, kind of try to prevent some of that damage from the double AP composition on the side of Dignitas. Also working towards that Black Cleaver, just general great item on Kha'Zix.
Yeah, definitely. Farming up pretty nice. Smithy's had a good series so far up against Chaser, who has been fairly inconsistent so far. Team Dignitas still really needing to shred the moniker of being Someday's team, as we were talking about earlier in the game. They've had big games on other people. In this one, Laud with the 2 kills would want to be able to poke through the Maokai and get a lot of damage onto the CLG low mobility carries. Save for that, though, and they're going to be a victim to Darshan just flying in, and the rest of CLG winning team fights for the win.
Well, sadly, the Echo pick hasn't been working out too fantastically for Keen so far. I mean, like you said, you pick it to not die to Syndra, but so far he's 0-2-0, and he's not being that guy that can shoulder the game along with Someday. He's kind of struggling.
Yeah, just trying to survive. He dies to Darshan Flash Twisted Advance. That's been the killer 2 times out of 2. Look out, too. Darshan's flash is up in about 15 seconds.
Aphromoon Smithy top side to sort of scare Keen away. Luckily for him, that Maokai isn't there on the other end of the map this time, so no Flash Twisted Advance potential just yet. But there's one Tier 1 turret left standing on the side of Dignitas. CLG wants to go ahead and take care of that problem real soon, but they also got to remember that the second Infernal Drake of this game is going to be live in 20 seconds. Yeah,
so CLG would want to take that, but they really don't want to give stacking Infernal Drakes to a team that has as much attack damage and ability power as Team Dignitas, so I'd like it if CLG prioritize that turret for later. And this is where CLG has differentiated themselves from Team Dignitas, is just better teamwork. And it's also where Team Dignitas has struggled a fair bit throughout the early parts of the split. It's just not being able to make proactive plays where they would need to as CLG is going to set up this Drake.
CLG hanging around the area. Someday throws some poke over the wall to just try to whittle those health bars down a little bit. Dig would love to have a second Infernal Drake under their belts. Chaser's not going to be there in time, though.
Who he's really low.
50 is who he's going to be taking low. Deadly Flourish comes out trying to buy a little bit more time. Piercing Arrow finds its way onto Darshan. Chaser going for a kick, lands it onto Stixay as well. Keen looking to jump himself around into the backline. Bullet Time going to be buying these guys some sort of an escape mechanism as Keen's forced to jump back. Piercing Arrow will not find Stixay. CLG disengage it.
Yeah, and nearly a disaster as the Blast Cone knocks Keen towards the retreating CLG, but he doesn't necessarily have the burst required to do anything about it and just ends up backing away. So, success CLG, they did have to burn 3 summoner spells during the escape, but they were even in position to defend the mid lane turret after that, so it's not much of a loss at all.
You know, I like the fact that Keen's building towards a Zhonya's Hourglass now. It means he might be able to do some crazy stuff in terms of playmaking with that, just haphazardly dive into the backline and buy himself a couple of extra seconds to allow his team to get in position to keep him alive. So maybe that'll open up opportunities for him to have a better chance in fights like that next time.
Yeah, he will definitely embolden him to be even more aggressive. It's a pretty great item on Swain since his birds continue to heal him if he Zhonya's while he's ulted, so he will actually heal during the stasis, making him even harder to take down in fights. Definitely a nice synergy.
Double Zonia is very difficult to deal with, but Dignitas will have it up and running before too much longer here. CLG, though, QSS on Syndra that was completed a while ago, just never touched on it until now. Really respecting what the Malzahar can do, and of course it's going to be great for Chains of Corruption and Never Moves as well, to make sure he doesn't get himself popped before he can find his own damage in these fights.
Yep, he's been a player who's known to position rather aggressively, although Special, gotta watch out.
Special in some trouble, curtain
Here
call
comes
opened up, Chaser blocking those shots away, but he's around the corner, he's got some burst coming down, Someday's going to be finding him, Special done. Chaser jumps over, but it's Aframu who now might be in some trouble as Keen's going to be locked up. Deadly Flourish finds, but not even a chrono break. He getting hit by the Never Move, trying to escape, but the bird DOT has got him. Lod trying to run from Smithy, but this is an Apex Predator double kill for CLG's jungler.
Man, that was a good call, considering Team Dignitas used to be Apex. Love it. Team Dignitas get caught out right in there, and Keen dies without using his ultimate at the end of it. He was in a weird spot that entire fight, but was never quite able to be cut down until the very end. And Team Dignitas basically spent all the time moving back and forth, trying to kill while he was still doing a bunch of damage, and the rest of Team Dignitas was dying. So a big map play win there. CLG better coordination throughout the fight, and they again come out on top.
And where are the kills going? Right onto Reset Machine Smithy.
Yeah, and I mean, Special kind of caught out once again. But then we watch this, he's in the jungle, and should be caught between 4 people. But he dodges out enough of the skill shots, including the Never Move. Chaser then jumps over the wall to ward, and they just kind of leave Keen. So that's poor team coordination right there. And then even after they land the route onto he still gets out a bunch of damage with which the rest of CLG can follow up on. And you're not going to escape Smithy. Get the jump up just in time. Finishes off Lock.
One thing worth noting about the last point I made, yes, Smithy does not actually have the capability of resetting yet. He did go for the Rocket Evolution second. He's going to be providing more of that long-range control, those slows for now, but once he does hit level 16, if he gets there with a lot of kills under his belt, it's going to be a very scary scenario if he gets a chance to go off again.
Yeah, I really do feel like the Evolved W second is a superior choice on Kha'Zix right now, with the way you see him in pro play. There is, I believe Acadian still does the E second because he's going off in a lot of these games, like he's 7-0, and if you're trying to do that and you want to one-shot someone when you jump in with a Duskblade or something, then I can still see the E second, but the utility that the W provides, and I never really thought this would happen, is just Kha'Zix almost always wanted the Evolved E second because the resetting jump is so amazing.
Yeah,
but
for hard carrying.
In this case, the Q and the W I feel are actually a little better than the E Evolve.
Pro play, of course, also a lot more coordinated than your usual solo queue, as Lod's going to be in some trouble. Edge of Night protects him from Smithy's assault. As the Chain of Corruption comes out, locks down the CLG jungler for just a little while. Curtain Call still got one last shot primed and ready to go. The tier 2 turret on Dig is going to survive for now. TP coming in. Someday looking to cut these guys off. Home guard there to allow him a little bit better positioning. Never Move, not going to be finding anyone as Deadly Flourish comes out again, trying to find some kind of an opportunity. Dignitas separated. Keen going to be dropping that parallel convergence, but isn't going to be able to step into it in time to stun anyone. Someday regrouping with the rest of the Dignitas boys. As the stun comes out, the Deadly Flourish follows it up, but that's not the target you can go on CLG. Dignitas now moving themselves forward yet again, seeing CLG so bloodthirsty, thinking they might be able to punish this, but ultimately both sides walk away.
Yeah, and it's also because it's really hard for Team Dignitas to lock down CLG safely. Their one biggest reliable initiation is Special's ultimate, but as soon as he uses it, he's basically going to die. And Someday can walk at them and they can try and win these slow fights, but as far as a crisp hard initiation, it's pretty rare.
Stun lands onto Chaser. Deadly Flourish won't be able to find him afterwards, though. That's the power of those Mercury Treads you were talking about earlier. The Chain CC, much harder to do correctly. And Chaser gets himself out. Even if they would have got him, he does have a Guardian Angel very, very early.
Yeah, that is an extremely early Guardian Angel. I feel like that is trying to cover up one of their weaknesses of initiation, because with the GA he can be much more bold with his initiations to get a kickback and still live to tell the tale as they slowly siege this mid lane turret. Aframu uses his ult, going to be forced to flash away. Here.
Nice stun onto multiple people. Special likely going to be killed here first. Smithy grabbing that damage. Chaser's going to be burst to 2. Stick stays done. Lod grabbing that kill, but Darshan's chasing Lod out. Chaser's going to go down twice now. GA will not do the job. 2 dead on the side of Dignitas, 1 on CLG, blinking health bars on both sides.
And you saw what Chaser had in mind. He got the kickback and he killed Stixay, but the rest of the team had a pretty poor team fight because Xpecial once again got caught out and everyone else on Team Dignitas just had to turn tail and run away.
Just in time for CLG to perfectly even up these Drake counts as well. Not just count, but type 2, Infernal and Cloud for both sides.
Absolutely. So Aphromoo trying to wave clear. CLG really just prepping this Darshan. He just walks at him to pop the shield from Xpecial. They kill him early. But then look at Stixxay kick back as the GA procs in. Ideally, you'd want Someday moving up towards Chaser to save him with that GA. But he had to really just run away from Xsmithy, who was doing a great job zoning him out as a now 5-0 Kazakhs.
5-0-2 on the Kazakhs, picking up a QSS of his own just in case they say, hey, you know, this bug's going off a little bit too hard. Maybe we should lock him down. Going to be a lot harder to do at this point in time. You also saw the work that the Hex Drinker was able to do in that essential 1v1 he had against Someday, keeping him alive and allowing him to win that fight.
Yeah, it's funny how they have the QSSs, but they're killing Xpecial at the start of the fights. The person they need the QSSs to defend. They're definitely making his life really difficult here as he's losing viable targets with which to ultimate and also getting heavily focused by CLG.
Second Guardian Angel in the game also up now. Darshan completing that one onto his Maokai means when he goes for those flash twisted advances, no fear in his heart.
Even safer. There is still the struggle of being able to kill Someday's Swain though. If these fights do drag on, it's really unfortunate for them that Keen is having such a rough game because he's the type of guy that you want for cleanup. Having Swain plus Assassin is actually a decent combo as Swain can get the low and the Assassin coming on the backside, but Keen quite get it.
Xpecial and Chaser both going to be likely picked off here. Xsmithy wants to make it happen, but Chaser still gets himself away. Keen's going to be locked up next. Bullet time coming out. Xsmithy going to be brought down by Keen. That's a pretty big shutdown to have as Stixxay goes for the flourish. Not going to find the kill just yet. Curtain call, 2 miss, 3 hits, and that's all you need.
Would have been a great escape by Keen, but he cannot juke quite well enough, and nearly a turn there by Team Dignitas in that fight, but boy, Xpecial is just a piece of paper in these fights. Not destroyed. Oh,
not having a good time as CLG thinks about maybe going for Bear, and that's going to be shut down pretty quick though. Dignitas still hanging around the area with Lod's arrows and Someday's ability to fling himself into the fight and just buy time. Hourglass still available, so if nothing else, he could waddle his way into the pit and just go invulnerable with the Ravens.
Absolutely. Watching this fight one more time though, you can see Xpecial gets his shield broken by the Misfortune E, and who he probably didn't need to ult Xpecial. He could have ulted Chaser and gets the kill and just thrown a Q at Xpecial, but he does it anyway to get the kill. This is where things get a little dicey, as King is able to kind of section Xsmithy off before Stixxay can make it to the fight. Flashes out of the Deadly Flourish, but as you mentioned, just has to hit one. Try as he might. Ooh,
number 3 is the magic number. Gets him with that nice flower fadeaway there at the end as well, marking his territory, saying, this is my kill. 2, 2, and 5 now for Stixxay. Edge of Night, Ghost Blade, Mortal Reminder, BF Sword to pile even more damage onto him. There's a reason that he was able to just destroy Keen's health with that rapid burst.
Yeah, these builds definitely excel at taking down people who are lower armor targets, and Mizonius gives a bit of armor, but it's not quite enough. When you consider the type of lethality he's going to be building up, probably going Duskblade next. Although, I have seen Infinity Edge on the Jhin since he has the guaranteed crit on the 4th shot. Definitely very effective.
CLG hanging around the Baron pit now, though. 33, 34 now minutes into the game. This is going to become a very real objective, a very real point of contention between these two teams.
Yeah, and 6,000 gold lead is nice and allows CLG to dictate, but it doesn't give them total freedom on what they want to do. So they will have to be careful. It is where they have excelled over Team Dignitas is in the team play aspect. So now that they have a lead to work with, really going to challenge Team Dignitas coordination and
Xpecial again. Bullet time, almost finishing him off. Curtain call shot's going to be blocked up well, so they're not able to finish him out. Stixxay's bullets were on point, by the way. If there were not other bodies blocking those, he would have finished off Xpecial multiple times, but Dignitas doing a good job of protecting the VIP.
Yeah, and Xpecial is in an incredibly difficult situation on this Malzahar because he is the primary initiator, as well as the person who needs to ward, as well as the person who is the lowest level in the game. So he's just almost set up to fail, but he's getting hit a lot. And can they kill
Someday so low. He Zonias the ult from Huhi, as now Lod's going to be cut out. The burst is there. Keen in the middle. Chrono Break right back into the fight, but he's not able to do any meaningful damage. Xpecial going to be gone. So is Chaser. GA is going to bring him back, but what for, man? He's in the middle of 4 guys. Dignitas gets completely routed, and CLG doesn't lose a single man.
And with the calm, clean call to go in for a fight, they're able to win it. And Someday wasn't there because he was taken so low previously. Still kind of got to respect a Swain walking into a bunch of low health people with Baron, but that Baron's dead.
Yeah, no way Dignitas can test this one whatsoever. The problem with Swain is if he was there, he would be a threat, but he doesn't really have any way to arrive.
Yeah, he just walks in. You need more setup if you want to get Swain involved in the fight. And when you watch the start of this, Syndra stun, has to zone is the ultimate. That lines up with the beautifully timed Deadly Flourish, and he's completely pushed out of the fight. Meanwhile, they were doing the Baron that whole time, so they immediately jump on Laud, knowing they've been able to zone Someday out. They then just land a huge amount of Cinder damage. I think Hui's doing a bunch of work in this game. Perfectly timed Deadly Flourish out of the Zonias. Then they just wait around for Chaser's GA, and it's a crisp, clean fight.
Very clean for CLG, who are now enjoying a 9,000 gold lead 36 minutes in. And there you go, Jad, exactly what you were talking about. 5,600 damage from Hui's Syndra in that last team fight. Stixxay did 875. He didn't even have to do anything.
Couple of Deadly Flourishes, and he did about 10,000 damage to Baron, because he was the one killing it and just assisting from over the wall. Now CLG's in such a powerful position. They might just run straight at him.
At least they didn't do 83 like Someday, who's now going to be the target yet again. Xmithie taken dangerously low, but CLG still looking to pressure onto this turret. Got to be careful about it, though, because Stixxay is also very close to death's door. Xmithie going to smite that Gromp down to grab a little bit of extra health on his way out in case Dig goes too ham chasing this. Elder Drake is alive. Dignitas might be making the call to go for this with CLG hurt, and it looks like they are. Xmithie still hanging around, firing those evolved rockets into this team, just trying to buy as much time as he can. He's got Darshan and Afro here as well. Afro ready to fire off the bullet time if need be to just zone these guys away from it. Curtain Call comes in. He's going to make the burst happen. Two are gone instantly. Xmithie off to the side, dueling with Keen, but Keen's able to find a lot of Time Winder damage. Not quite going to get it on the back end. Double kill for Stixxay. Keen's going to be cut to pieces by Xmithie. 4 for 1.
And this could just be a walk-up mid lane. They still have the Baron buff. They're a little low. Someday always finding his way out the back of the fight, but that's because he's never quite able to get in the fight in the way he wants to. This is at least going to be the inhibitor.
Someday survives every fight, but then bad things happen to Team Dignitas, and those bad things are going to include a mid lane inhibitor going down here 37 minutes in. Still some decent death timers waiting on him, and CLG might just be looking to make the finish. Syndra's not going to find his way onto Someday just yet. Xspecial hanging around to scare these guys off. Deadly Flourish will not find the mark.
They gotta be careful.
Darshan ready in case they go a little bit too far. Twisted Advance, always a scary option if you're Dignitas to be walking into that. Darshan still with that Guardian Angel, and CLG, they just grab their inhibitor and they get out.
Yeah, smart play. Everyone building up to just the right items. Infinity Edge completed. Hui able to get Death Cap. We're watching this one more time. The big Elder Drake fight. And once again, Xspecial is immediately dead. Hui able to kill him early. And then they just chase down the carries because there's not a big front line for Team Dignitas right here. Good timing by Darshan to just make sure he's keeping Echo locked down so he can't do anything sneaky. And now it's just, why not? Rinse and repeat. CLG, right back at Elder.
That Maw of Malmortius, again, doing a lot for Xmithie, keeping him alive against that burst damage coming out from Keen, who, even though he hit him with the back part of the Time Winder the second time around, wasn't able to secure the kill. Make It Rain coming down onto the Wolves, forcing Keen to jump away over the wall to safety. CLG with complete control over this area, except for Chaser hanging around behind the Elder Drake pit to make a steal.
Yeah, he's thinking ahead. He's saying,
he's ready.
There's no way we're able to fight him. The only way I can keep us in this game is if I can sneak in here and steal it. They don't know I'm back here because who would wait here for 30 seconds? Chaser, they're going for a steal?
Zero or Hero, what's it gonna be? It's gonna be Zero! They've got it on the side of CLG. They take down 2 instantly. Keen TP's in, can't even find his chrono break in time. Curtain Call opened up, not hitting the mark on the Lodic. Special fires off the ulti just for the hell of it. Double kill Stixxay. He can't find the rest, but it's Lod and Someday versus the CLG world, and that world's looking awfully heavy.
Oh yeah, supportal combat right at the end there. Stixxay cheated and killed Xspecial one more time. Rough game for him and Keen, and CLG looks like they're gonna take this 2-0.
Darshan, with about the same concern for the turrets as he had at the end of game 1, just does not care. Someday's gonna be going down this time. You don't walk away from that one. Stixxay dominating. as Rockets find their way into Lod's back. The Nexus turrets find their way into the ground, and CLG is going to find their way into a 2-0 victory over Team Dignitas.
And this one was much more solid than game one. CLG able to put 2 games together here and prevent themselves from falling into last place, which is now the predicament that Team Dignitas find themselves in.
Team Dignitas, one of the 2 teams in North American LCS now with a 1-5 record. Not a pretty place to be sitting, but a relief now for the boys on CLG, knowing that they've got that second win for themselves. They're more towards the middle of the pack. They've got some solid footing to stand on going into week 4.
And they found themselves the right level of comfort in this Team Dignitas series. First picking the Maokai for Darshan set up a ton of plays, and then they still got pretty strong picks elsewhere. Huhi Syndra was incredibly involved in setting up the picks, and this is a style that CLG hasn't necessarily been able to win with when Aphromoo isn't on the initiator. So it's encouraging for CLG here, and I think that's one of the reasons they have such big smiles.
And Huhi, just the damage he was able to deal in every single fight in the latter half of that game was just phenomenal. The burst that he put onto health bars as soon as he was unleashing those abilities just took people so low that there was almost no way to wage a coherent fight for Team Dignitas.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one thing that happens when Team Dignitas relies on Someday to carry. They could have gone through this draft phase with a much more standard fare. They could have had the Malzahar and a Nautilus top with an Orianna or a Cassiopeia mid lane and just kind of rolled it in like a standard team. But all the carry top laners were gone. They reached in for that Swain, hoping he'd be able to carry on the backside. And then where were they going to find team fights? Their team composition ended up kind of lacking a lot of cohesion as they weren't able to pull super far ahead in those lanes. And it's a tough series for Team Dignitas, and it's turning into a very tough year.
And going into that game, we talked about how the comfort pick of the Lee Sin for Chaser, they prioritized that. They could have picked the Kha'Zix. They go for Lee instead. Chaser ends up 0-5-4, and the Kha'Zix instead goes over to Xmithy, who just has a phenomenal game, 8-1-10.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? When you are prioritizing these picks over things that could be expected to be better and then still don't perform. And that's the trouble with Team Dignitas right now is they're reaching to try and find things that work because they've tried it the other way. They've tried having Keen on Ryze Cassiopeia, and they've tried Someday on the tanks. That hasn't necessarily worked. Fiora wasn't there. They have a lot of work to do, and 1-5 is not the start they wanted. CLG didn't want to start 2-4, but it's better than 1-5, so they're pretty happy.
A win is a win. And for more on that series win, let's check in with Azael and CLG's veteran support.
Thanks, guys. Great cast on the day. I'm here with Aphromoo. A lot of fan support here for you guys today. You know, you got the job done. 2-0, looking a lot cleaner than you have in some of your other games. How does it feel to get the win under your belt and kind of get some momentum back?
It's cool. We're 2-4, so I'm not that happy. But I'm really proud of how we played today. And the boys did really well. The boys is what we call ourselves. But we had a lot of trouble, you know, figuring out roles and stuff like that. No longer my, you know, playmaking initiator, and it moves off to other people. And we definitely have been working really hard. So I'm proud of my guys.
So moving out of that role, how does that feel for you? You know, how is that as a shift as a player? Because you've been known for so long as the guy to kind of make the plays for the team, to start those fights, and moving back and kind of playing a more supportive role or a different role. How's that feeling for you?
It's hard at times, but I just have full trust in my teammates. Definitely Darshan's been stepping up a lot, doing main engaging opportunities, as well as Trevor, Jay, and Jake also being more of the super carry roles, having jungler being in the carry position, and they're doing really well. So I'm really happy.
It's good to hear. So you guys had a couple close series against some of the high teams, obviously C9, TSM, playing them very close. You know, you weren't able to get those wins, and that has hurt you in the standings. But does it give you some confidence that you can, you know, take down these teams later in the season and improve and kind of climb your way back up?
I am confident that we can beat them. The teams that we did lose to, it was very close, and we know we can beat them as well. We just got to sharpen up our play.
All right, well, I'm sure you can do it. Thanks a lot, Aphromoo. Congrats again on the win, and we're going to send it back to the guys at the desk.
Thank you very much, Azael. CLG happy with their 2-0 victory here over Dignitas. And this second game looking much better than the first. Let's start off with player of the game, going to Huhi, because we're going to frame a lot of this discussion around him and the difference between a CLG with an underperforming Huhi and a solidly performing Huhi.
Right, I think we saw game one. He didn't play team fights great on the Orianna. He whiffed a number of ultimates, burned his flash ones when he basically sombreroed on himself.
Right.
But in this game, he actually plays really, really well. And most of the plays in the early mid-game that really built CLG their lead were centered around him and Smithy kind of working together. And it's no surprise that these are two of the most consistent members we have seen on CLG this season.
Right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the first replay. 25 minutes in, 3 for 1 here for CLG, kind of up in the top lane. Bit of a mess of a fight, but it worked out in their favor.
Right, I mean, the way Huhi plays this is definitely not like, oh yes, this is great
Flanking
standard
Syndra.
play. Flanking Syndra, you know, tries to get the pick and then flashes into Someday, realizes the threat's off him now, he's fine, goes back into the fight off the blast cone to go get another 3-man stun basically here. And it's just the kind of thing where it's not typical Syndra play.
Right.
But it's effective. He's getting stuff done. He's setting up picks and helping his team ultimately pick up a 3 for 1 here. And I think it's a little unfair that Huhi always has this stigma of being like a role player who's on CLG trying to help them get stuff done.
Yeah.
He's much more of just a playmaker. When he's on Aurelion Sol, that's when he's on his best, because Aurelion Sol is just a playmaking champion generally. And we've seen him have good games on Katarina this season. He's had a bunch of Orianna games, minus that last one that have been pretty good.
Well, but
Yeah.
even in that last one, we talk about those missed shockwaves and stuff, that's him attempting to make a play. So
Right.
that falls in line with what you're talking about in terms of him being a playmaker. When you're a playmaker, your blunders are going to be noticed. If you're just a role player who's kind of sitting back, then you're probably not going to have as many of those like, oh, what was he thinking moments where
Right.
people are going to criticize you. He's attempting to win games for his team. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it does not.
Right, and I think it's fair to say that in this season, at least, he's actually been very impressive. His team hasn't quite been following up with him, and it's unfortunate CLG is sitting at 2-4 right now. But a number of their losses they've looked decent in. They've played a number of hard opponents already, and I think they're a team that coming in, we expected them to beat Dignitas, and they did it. Not the most convincing game one, but game two was pretty nice.
Right, they've got Fox and P1 next week, so those are going to be two formidable opponents for this CLG roster that's looking to kind of start their climb. We've talked about how, as a veteran roster, this is a team that probably isn't too shaken up by their poor start. They know that they can turn it on and are all pretty confident moving into the latter half of the season that they can start to pick up wins, but it does need to start now, and they got it today against P1 and Echo Fox next week. We'll see if they can even up their record.
And even the way they did it in game one, I actually really liked. It's like the CLG of old, where they're moving around the map, they're getting these tower trades when they find the laning phase not working great for them, and they were able to control the bot side jungle. They did a lot of things really nice. They just had, they were against a Someday Fiora that started getting out of control.
Right, and now we have to talk about the declining Dignitas here, because 1-5 record here off of the hot start, the one victory that they had in week one that everybody is looking at saying, holy crap, this could be a top 2 team right here off the back of Someday and the carry champions. Well, it's not coming together anymore. Here they try something different, handing him the Swain in the top lane. Doesn't work out, even though he had a CS lead.
Right, and I think you can't quite criticize the idea because CLG obviously target bans the traditional AD focus carries. He tries the Swain. We've seen Looper find success on that, and it's an okay idea. The thing you have to look at is like why the Lee when Kha'Zix is up, and you know that CLG is probably going to play the other side of that matchup. And then it feels like Dig gets really controlled around the bot in mid lane, and Chaser gets stuck having to kind of babysit those lanes and help them versus going up to snowball Someday. It felt like Chaser just couldn't get where he wanted to be on the map and had to keep reacting, and didn't quite have a great game either.
Yep, so still struggling Dignitas. We'll see if they can find more ways to win other than Someday in the top lane. CLG, though, happy with the 2-0 victory here to close out their week. We've got more league action coming your way. Cloud9 hit the rip next as they go up against Echo Fox.
All the way there.
Oh, here we go.
Flash ult. Play ult's going to be used. Afromoo taking low. Piercing arrow coming out. Chains of Corruption to follow it up. Afromoo going to be taken down first. Stixay looking to get away. Lod has got the pick up there, but it's a double kill for Xfinity as well. 2 for 2 so far, and Someday is not looking to stop anytime soon. Chaser jumps over, but it's Afromoo who now might be in some trouble as Keen's going to be locked up. Deadly Flourish finds, but not even a chrono break. Huhi getting hit by the Never Move, trying to escape, but the Bird DOT has got him. Lod trying to run from than Smithy, but this is an Apex Predator double kill. Someday so low, he Zonia's the ult from Huhi, as now Wad's gonna be cut out. The burst is there, Keen in the middle. Chrono Break right back into the fight, but he's not able to do any meaningful damage. Xpecial's gonna be gone, so is Jacer. GAO's gonna bring him back, but what for, man? He's in the middle of 4 guys.